Hello everyone. Today I'm going to display that how a landscape can be made with just two colors and along with the tinter. So I am here using burnt sienna and sap green. Both are complementary to each other. So they'll create very dark colors as well as warm colors. When they're mixed with white, they are going to generate pale colors, and also the greens can also be used, and yellow can be made out of mixing burnt sienna with white. So with this theory I'm just going ahead. So you can see that I'm doing a tonal drawing rather than a line drawing initially. So this is a very blackish kind of a color, chromatic black developed out of burnt sienna and sap green. Now I'm putting down some marks to indicate which part should be darker and which part should be lighter. So all of these are done using big brushes. Now I'm using a rag to clean some of the areas or getting rid of the colors to create some lighter sections so that I can understand which part should be lighter. And here I am using some other dark patches. Now I am using a very pale mix of burnt sienna, sap green and white to cover the sky. So this looks like almost a very pale version of yellow ochre, and again a very pale mix to lighten the top of the distant trees that we have, to indicate that those parts are receiving light. Now using just two colors doesn't mean that it's restrictive. It's actually very interesting because you'll get to know what and how you can manipulate the colors. There are various combinations that are possible with such ultra limited palette. For example, black and raw umber, or maybe burnt sienna, or a transparent yellow oxide kind of a color, earth colors and black, these are very useful. So here I'm not using all the earth colors. This is sap green, regularly available, and burnt sienna, to create all sorts of mixes. You can see how many variations of the two colors are there. Here I'm using a big brush to indicate some vertical shadow sections, the reflections on the water. And here are some land sections. And now I'm using the palette knife to indicate the ground that are near us. It'll involve some detailing work, but I'm going to keep it as abstract as possible, so that these colors become optically mixable to be quite honest. So I'm using a rounded palette knife to create some hits and misses. Some parts will receive more colors, some parts will receive less colors. So this is almost like an abstract painting in a way. I'm indicating some highlights. This is burnt sienna with white, that those highlighted sections, those are empty lands where there is no grass. Now I'm using a fan brush, a modified one, to create some points of interest, more highlights. So you can see that how many variations are possible with just those two colors and the one tinter. A tinter or white is going to make things cool, because I'm using titanium white, and it tends to make all the colors cool. So in some parts where it's light, I've deliberately used titanium white mixed with some amount of burnt sienna to warm it up. But here in the trees, in the darker areas, there's hardly any white involved. I'm using the rounded brushes to create some interesting strokes to indicate shadows. The edges of the round brush are very versatile, and I tend to use round brushes now more and more. Now I'm creating some bird holes with the brush, and here I'm increasing some darkness to create some points of interest and directing the light towards some other sections. And here I'm using the same fan brush to create some darker sections to work on the water. Here I'm modifying the land section a little bit. These parts will receive lesser light compared to the other areas. Now I started using a slightly paler color compared to what is there in the trees to indicate some lighter areas, and I'm using a fan brush to create those marks. Now here I'm using almost pure white with a mixture of burnt sienna, slight amount, and dragging the brushes with patchier strokes to create the water. I'm using a heavily loaded brush, but now in some of the sections it has become like a dry brush technique. Now here I'm using the rounded brush to create some land areas and modifying those and turning this or getting this closer to reality. And there are some highlighted sections, distant sections that I'm working on and making them a little bit softer. A scene must look realistic, so that is the focus. Now this is like a super highlight, and I'm using now a very thin brush to create all sorts of highlighted marks, and I'll be focusing on all the areas that I have been painting upon and will be refining those with those patches. You can see that some areas will have hits and misses, so it is going to create a broken effect, which is called broken color in Impressionism, and that was one of the basic techniques that they applied. Fully loaded brushes dragged across the surface, and there are some hits and misses which from a distance represent reality. Now this is again a modified brush, but I'm using it to create very thin sort of strokes to create some highlighted areas in the water. These brushes work really well. And here I've started working on the sky with a fill butt, now adding some pure white areas, and we'll be working upon those as well. There are some areas in the painting, when you look at those, they are like it shows that you have been playing with color and brush strokes and stuff like that they add some value. They do not look like overworked. So here I'm using that thin brush again to create some rounded marks, and I'm now blending them. There are some areas that are more visible than the others, and this is almost like finishing touch. I'm using an old brush, and this has been with me for 4 or 5 years, so it has got some problematic areas, but it does the job for the foliage. And these are slightly more highlighted areas, and these are some dragging marks done with that brush to create some branches. These are very dark, and it has a feeling of evening scene. So you can see that painting is possible with two colors, warm and cool, and it can create some sort of a mood, and very effective. But you need to understand that it should have this warm and cool combination. Again, another modified brush to create some more random marks, and this is the shot of the final painting. So if you like this video, then please click the like button, and also subscribe for future videos, and also check out my website www.kaustavandfineart.com for more paintings. Take care.